Horace were an humble lad, come from an humble line. He didn't have a lot in life, which suited him right fine. Said he, this, and as I've been dealt, is good enough for me. He had no side, and what he was there for all to see. Now Horace had a soft spot from this lass from down their lane, all fair and fine with bright blue eyes, and they called her Mary Jane. She wasn't just a buffing lass, as most girls round there were there, but she had a place at an high-class shop that sold smart ladies' wear. He'd see her every now and then, well, twice a day or more, because as she came and went from tram, she had to pass the door, and every time she passed, he'd try to find some words to say, but by the time they'd shared a nod, she'd be well on her way. And then there came this summer's day as Mary Jane went by. How Horace knew his time had come, no time for being shy. They nodded as they always did, and she walked briskly past. A tram were coming down the hill, and Horace jumped up fast. "Hey up, Mary Jane," he said, and fell in step with her. "I'll eat then, lass," he asked, and she smiled at him, unsure. "Thank you, yes," she said to him, and then, "I have to run." The tram were coming to the stop where Mary Jane got on. He trotted on beside her. He said, "I'll race you there." He grinned to see the way her hat were bouncing on her hair. Mary Jane grinned back at him. A flush came to her face. She clamped her hat upon her head and quickened up her pace. They made the stop with time to spare and little cause to worry, though Mary Jane were flustered, clearly hot and in a hurry. "Oh, Horace, that was horrid," she said, slowing to a stand. "And look at that, I had to hold my hat on with my hand." Well, Horace started laughing and he said, "Hey, lass, gie away. Where'd thou learn to talk like that? Hey, come on, do some more." And Mary Jane stared back at him, aghast and in surprise, then turned to wide, hurt, angry tears that welled up in her eyes. The tram came clattering to an halt, and then, without a word, Mary Jane, her back still turned, quite coldly climbed aboard and took a seat. Without a glance, the tram, it pulled away, as Horace stood and watched it go, dumbfounded in dismay. Well, weeks went past and Mary Jane refused to meet his eye, but raised her chin and looked away each time that she walked by. And though he tried to make her bend, she kept her manner stiff, and every move that Horace made was no more than a sniff. Then came August holiday, and everywhere shut down, while those as could afford to took themselves off out of town. And Horace and his Mary Jane, quite separately of course, both went on an excursion to Cleethorpes on the coast. The day were fine which made a change, the sun shone in the sky. As Horace moped along the front and minutes dragged on by, and in the gardens by the prom sat Mary Jane and wished the hours away so she could go back home again. But when the time came round, it seemed that neither he nor she felt much need to rush, and each one lingered by the sea. Until from in the station they heard the whistles blasted, tried to make the way onto the platform mighty fast. It were there in the milling crowd that they came face to face. "How do?" he said, and looked at her. He thought he saw a trace of something that might be a smile light in her blue eyes. And then the train began to move, to both of them's surprise. "Oh, we'll have to run," he said, "or else we'll both be stuck. At least we won't be stuck alone, and so that's a piece of luck," said Mary Jane, and Horace gawped. The train were gaining pace. "Grab your hat," said Horace, "it's time for us to race." Well, Mary Jane, she went quite red as she broke into a trot. She grabbed her hat and pulled it off, for plainly she were hot. "This airing round's just horrid, and it hasn't helped a bit. Cool the heels, old lad," she said. "Let's find somewhere to sit." Well, Horace started laughing and said, "Hey up, Mary Jane, I think your airs and graces have gone off on that there train." And then he said, "I'm sorry, lass, I didn't mean no harm, but there's much nicer talking reet than swanking with this marm." "I only have to talk like that for work," said Mary Jane, "and it's easier to keep it up than stop and start again. And what folks thinks, that's up to them, at least for most of the time. But if it's folk I like, then yeah, I'm inclined to mind." Horace took her in his arms. She stayed there ever since. Sometimes she still talks like a queen. He'll never be a prince. And their only aspirations are a simple, "Yeah, I do." no need to mind your H's when you're saying, I love you.
Yeah.